Hello, everybody. I very nearly said good morning. This is what I normally say because these talks are usually at 10 in the morning. But today things went very differently. So we're doing an 8 in the evening instead. So hopefully this will mean maybe some people who aren't able to attend the morning sessions might be able to hop on and watch this live. Um, so today's talk, we're having a look at the word should. Now, this might be a bit of a random subject for you, but I have to say over the last, gosh, must have been 10, 15 years now, that I've been training myself to change some of my vocabulary. I have to say, in its own way, it's been quite life-changing, and it's something that I really wanted to share with you all because it's so simple, and it can make a big shift in a lot of the ways that we approach managing our time, the choices we make, the decisions we make. And very often we have a should or several shoulds that are rolled in, and it can make decision making more complicated than it needs to be. And it's a tricky word, really, because it's kind of short and simple. It's an everyday thing. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily that laden with meaning, but actually at its root, it's something that is quite judgmental and quite heavy and a bit finger wagging. It's, to me, it brings up, almost that sense of being told off. When as a child you have teachers, parents, or other adults going, you really should, or you really shouldn't. And there's an implication there that if you either don't do as asked or carry on doing something that you're told you shouldn't do, that you're being bad or naughty, or that you're wrong or failing. There's all these connotations there that surround the word should. It underpins a kind of moral judgment on behavior. And so when we bring that into our day-to-day life and decision making and how we run our business and in everything, really, if we find ourselves saying should a lot to ourselves, then we're bringing in all of that judgment, all of that kind of moral weight, which then can make things feel much more fraught than they need to be. And then it makes kind of our duties, for want of a better word, or, our to-do list, our tasks, our responsibilities, makes them feel really heavy, like a real burden. It's like, oh, I really, I should be doing these things. And we might have this constant list of things that we're telling ourselves, like, oh, I should be doing an Instagram post every day. I should be doing more reels. I should be doing more marketing. I should be chasing up inquiries. I should be developing sorry, I just had a little flash of a connection issue. I hope we're still live. Good. So, there's an endless list of things that we feel we should be doing. We should be spending more time with the kids. We should be reading a bedtime story every night. We should be doing our practice. We should be eating better. We should be drinking more water. Like, I could sit here probably for an hour giving you a list of all the things we should be doing. And quite frankly, I find when I'm on social media for work purposes, there's loads of posts as well telling us what we should be doing to be better and healthier and shinier, more productive, winning at life. There's endless shoulds. And they just pile on like this huge wheelbarrow of rocks, is the image that comes to mind. And it really sucks the joy out of life. And it can suck the joy out of those things that maybe are necessary in our lives and things that would be beneficial if we did do them. But with this weight of the shoulds, it already just feels like it's not going to be fun. It's not a nice thing. And again, I think it goes back to maybe this thing that we heard a lot in childhood. It's like, well, you really should finish your dinner before you're allowed any pudding. You really should be brushing your teeth twice a day. You should be doing your homework. And, these shoulds that we're used to, they're kind of implying that the thing that we should be doing, or maybe not doing, the moral judgment around that is that these are things that go against our desires, our wishes, our joy. So, we want as kids to play and have fun, but we should be doing our homework. And so this kind of dynamic can come up quite a lot. And so when we're using the word should often in our day-to-day life, not only is it kind of adding unnecessary kind of weight of obligation and that lack of freedom and that moral judgment, but it's also kind of sucking the fun out of something. So there's this whole pressure that comes with shoulds for us to actually override some of our needs and potentially some of our boundaries. It can lead us to feel like we're not in control of our life, that we don't have choices or options. And, there's a very simple solution to this, which is just to switch the should to a could. And it's a tiny, tiny change. It's just a couple of letters. But as an example, let's say, it's a weekend, it's a beautiful day, and you think, oh God, what a gorgeous day. We don't get so many of those this time of year. I really want to go out on a nice country walk, but I really should phone my mom. It's been a while. And like this phone call is not going to be more than 5 minutes. And so by using the word could, well, let's just say, using the word should there, saying, I would really love to take advantage of this opportunity of a beautiful day, go for a walk in the countryside. It will be so enjoyable, really good for me, but I should do something else instead. There is then, it sets you up for guilt and resentment, because then, if you do the thing you want to do, then you're carrying guilt with it. So it takes the joy out of that. So all the while you're doing this beautiful woodland walk, you think, oh yeah, but I should be phoning my mom. I'm being really selfish. You feel really guilty. Or if you don't go and you make the phone call, then you're going to feel a bit of resentment. It's like, oh God, but this might be the last chance I get, such a beautiful day before winter sets in, and missing my opportunity, and I've got so many obligations and this doesn't feel fair. And in both cases, you're not having a nice time, and neither of those things are anyone else's fault either. And so it just sets us up for a lose-lose situation. And just by changing the word from should to could, what you're opening up are options and possibilities from which you can choose. So, and that's where, when we say could and we take away all that moral judgment, and we're just opening up options by saying, well, it's a beautiful day. I could go for a walk. I could take advantage of that. Equally, it's been a while and I've got some free time. I could phone my mum. And then you can choose between them. And when we have that openness with the could, it's like, and what other options are there? With the should, there's often just becomes this either or. It's like either you get to do what you want or you fulfill your obligations. And then when you open up could, then you can open up the idea that there are many more options. How about you could go for a walk and chat to your mum on your mobile phone while you're doing it? And, that could be another option. Maybe you could do one thing first and the other thing later. Like, soon as you say could, it kind of frees up our thinking and our feeling to say, well, maybe there's a way of making the dutiful thing more enjoyable and more fun. Maybe there's a way of still fulfilling my needs and getting the things done that need to be done. And so, in a way, today is a very good example of me juggling things. So this morning, what I had was a school visit with my daughter, because she will be starting secondary next year. And it ran longer than I had anticipated, and it chucked it down with rain. So I got home just after 10. And so I could say, I should do my talk. I told everyone I was going to do it at 10 o'clock. But equally, I was not in a good place to do that. I didn't feel prepared. I looked like a drowned rat. I wasn't comfortable. It would be rushed. And so, rather than either feeling bad about not doing it or forcing myself to go through with something that wasn't right at the time, to open up the possibilities, like, well, yeah, okay, I could get my laptop out, quickly blow dry my hair and get everything set up, and I could squeeze it in before my next thing. Or let's have a look at my diary. I do have space at other times in the day. I could try doing it in the evening, and maybe that might be good for some people. And so I'm still doing the thing that I promised in a slightly different way. I still get to do the things that I need to do. And so it just opens things up in a much nicer way, and again, quite often there will be times where, I'm up against a deadline, and perhaps feeling a bit tired and thinking, oh, I should finish the things that I've scheduled to do. And, again, there's a heaviness with that. But when I then allow myself the possibility of, okay, I could do the thing now, or I could maybe have a nap, do a little yoga nidra and do it later. Or I could go to bed now and get up super early in the morning and do it then. I could even add a push, would it be the worst thing in the world to shift a deadline? So soon as you start opening up these other possibilities, then it frees you from a lot of that burden, and just allows you to feel a lot more in control of what's going on in your life, to say, well, I am a free person. I have the choice. I could do this now. I could do it later. There are always options. And so, just as that really simple thing of any time you catch yourself saying should, and of course it comes, and I still do it quite regularly, but then it kind of sets off a little flag for me. It's like, oh, what's that should about? Is it really true? And what does it feel like if I just switch that to a could? And sometimes there are very definite deadlines, like getting your tax return filed before the deadline for HMRC or whichever jurisdiction you're in. There are certain things and you think, it's not really negotiable. There's a few times where you can say that kind of is a should, but even then, having the openness to say, okay, so what happens if I don't? What are the consequences? Could I live with those? Is it a feasible thing to swallow maybe a late filing penalty to give yourself the breathing space to do something which in the moment might be more important? We always have this ability to make choices. And it took quite a long time for me to get better at that, because we often feel like we don't have choices in life. And that can make us feel really stuck. And we might have this in our business as well, where we feel things can only be done a certain way, that we have to teach a certain way, that we have to run our classes a certain way, that we have to offer certain pricing structures or times of day, or whatever rules there are that you might have unconsciously created for yourself. The joy of a word should is that it's that little kind of, it reveals itself, that we have that little red flag to say, oh, there's a judgment around this. And what does it feel like to swap that for a could? And how could we open that up to challenge the truth of that and look for other solutions, other ways of doing things, and look at as many options that you can think of, and decide for yourself then which impact or consequences or outcomes you're most happy with. And then we start to feel like we're much more steering our ship than feeling the victim of circumstance. And it's a much nicer feeling, even if we are perhaps, pushing it a little bit. In the broad scheme of things, if you've looked at all the options and you think, actually, I'm going to choose for this time to pull a bit of a late night, finish all the things because that's so much better for me in the long run, and make that as a conscious choice, rather than the feeling of, oh God, I'm going to have to stay up till midnight finishing this, and I'm so tired and it's awful, and oh, I'm failing in my business. And like, we can really spiral with that. Whereas I think when we drop the should and go, okay, well, that's one option, I could do that. There are other options as well. But I think when we have the should, that then gives us the one option. You either do this thing or you don't. And usually if you don't do it, there's this feeling like you've failed, you've let someone down, you're being bad, whatever label you want to put it. And so for me, that has been such a tiny thing that's had a disproportionately big impact for the good, that it really felt like it was worth sharing. So yeah, just as a takeaway from today, just any time you come across should, or if people are throwing should at you, And if you have children, I think it's a really nice thing to share with them, is, where possible, change the should for could, see how that feels in your body and see what opens up as other options and other possibilities so that we can move forward feeling like we are consciously choosing or recognizing we're consciously choosing. I think quite often in my life, I've seen with people who feel like, or they insist they have no other choices, it has to be like this, and they're suffering, and they're not able to see that actually they're the person who sort of created all these rules and challenges, and that they're not the victim of circumstance. So I suppose the victim of their own choices, but they haven't got to a point where they're able to see that it is actually their choice. And sometimes we have to challenge our underlying beliefs and fears. And, there are all these reasons why a should will come up, maybe unconsciously, to protect us from something else, like other people's disappointment or disapproval or getting into trouble, or, whatever these things are. But to then, as an adult, to take a breath and change that and say, well, is it really a should? And unless, it's an absolute legal obligation, most things in life we have choice over. And we decide for ourselves, which course of action is the wisest one for us at any given time. And when we take that for ourselves, it's a much bigger feeling in life, rather than feeling small and buffeted as we all were in England with the weather today. To feel like when we can make choices for ourselves, it opens up a whole lot of other possibilities, not only in life, but in our business as well, that we can start to perhaps let go of the things that don't work. Because as long as we keep the should attached to it, we're not allowed to let go of it, because we have a moral obligation to continue whatever that thing is. So as soon as we let go of the morality of it and trust that we are decent, ethical, thoughtful people, then you give yourself more freedom to make the choices from a place of expansion rather than from a place of fear. So I hope that's helpful. It's been very lovely to see some people live here today. So hello to Sue and Wendy and Joe. Nice to see you here. If this has kind of rung some bells for you and you would like to share any insights or thoughts or aha moments, that's always really lovely to hear. You can do that in the comments below, or if you feel like sharing anything on the screen now, feel free to type in a comment. But yeah, it's just such a simple thing that can make such a big difference in kind of everything that we do. Just very simply, when you feel the should, change it to could and see what happens. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. Wish you a very lovely rest of the evening, and I will be back next week, back at the usual time. Fingers crossed, all things working. And I can't remember what subject we're doing next week, but the post will be coming up soon. And I hope that you found this super useful. Take care.